Good morning, everyone. We're going to call this meeting of the Tennessee Fish and Wildlife Commission to order. Today is full commission day and also committee day. It's a one-day meeting, so you may see some committee action and full commission action the same day, which is a little different than most of the time if you come to the meetings. Before we get started, I'm going to ask Mr. Glenn Moats to lead us in prayer, but I definitely want to remember our Assistant Director, Bobby Wilson, who's not here with us today. He lost his father this week, Mr. Sonny Wilson, so would ask everyone to remember that family this week in your prayers. And Glenn, I'll ask you to lead us in the invocation, and Commissioner McLaren is going to lead us in the pledge.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we come before you today in the name of your Son, who were it not for him and his sacrifice, we could not come before you at all. We thank you for this day we've been given, Lord, to serve you and to exercise our stewardship over your creation that you've entrusted to us. Lord, our desire is that, and all that's done and said here today, Lord, is pleasing to you. Give us wisdom, Lord, to make decisions that would honor you. I thank you for each one that's here today, Lord, and their commitment to the work that you have called them to. Grant favor to our mission, honor our desire to please you in all things. And Lord, we do ask that you would give special grace and comfort to Bobby Wilson and his family during this difficult time, Lord. In Christ's name, amen. To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We also have a commissioner that's not with us today, Commissioner Steve Jones. He and his wife drove down Wednesday night and got a call that his stepfather passed away, so they had to turn around and leave Thursday morning. So remember them also, but that's the reason he's not here today. He did come, and wish there was a way we could count him present today. But Danette, would you call the roll?
Dennis Gardner. Here. Jimmy Granberry. Here. Steve Jones. Connie King. Here. Jim Ripley. Here. Tony Sanders. Here. James Stroud. Here. Kent Woods. Here. Tommy Woods. Here. Hank Wright. Here. Angie Box. Here. Brian McLaren. Here. Kurt Holbert. Here. Chairman, we have a quorum.
Thank you, Danette. There are several guests here today, and I'm going to miss some of you for sure. But we did have a sheet here with some on them. Got Mr. Nick Crafton, Haywood County, Dr. David Bueller from UT, Mike Butler from Tennessee Wildlife Federation, former Commissioner Bill Cox, former Commissioner Jim Bledsoe, Scott Reese, Tammy Woods, who is the wife of Commissioner Tommy Woods, Karen McKinney, who's Dave McKinney's wife, Mayor of Fayette County, Mr. Skip Taylor's in the back of the room. We've got several students from UT Martin, the wildlife program. I'm glad they joined us today. I'm going to go ahead and do this instead of at the end, but the Lone Oaks crew has been unbelievable on this trip. From everything from the food, the hospitality has just been unreal, and I just want to Ben West and his crew, many of them. But thank you for what you do. Thanks for your hospitality here. Truly, and just an awesome place. I don't know how to explain it, but just the farm in general is just amazing. We went on a float trip yesterday of the Wolf River. Actually, I'd never seen an inflatable life jacket work. Got to see one of the commissioners try one of those out accidentally. Won't miss any names at all.
Some equipment
but
needs to be tested.
Anyway, but it's been but I'd like everybody, if they would, give the Lone Oaks crew a round of applause. Also, Miss Lisa Holmes, I don't know where she is. She is a Region 1. Not even. I see her in the back waving. Her and Amy Spencer and Bubba's been here too, but thank you all for what you've done and getting all this lined up. Director Carter, do you have any announcements or any words of wisdom?
No.
I don't know why I said that. All of you have got a copy on your iPad or in your notebook of the previous minutes from September. Do I hear approval? Motion for approval? Hear a second? Motion was by Commissioner Gardner and a second by Stroud. All in favor say aye. All opposed, like sign. Motion carried. All right, we're going to get on with our agenda. We're going to start with a presentation of some awards. I'm going to call on our Wildlife and Forestry Chief, Joe Benedict, if he would, to come up.
Good morning, folks. This is the highlight of the year for the Wildlife and Forestry Division staff, where we celebrate two folks who have been nominated by their peers for the Biologist of the Year and the Technician of the Year award. And we also have a new award that we're going to give out, a Team of the Year award for the Wildlife Division, so we'll save that for later. But the first winner, the recipient of the Biologist Technician of the Year award, is Austin Bibb. And bear with me as I look for his review that I'm not sure I have on this computer. We have a new award that I'm really excited about, and I may not have brought Austin's information with me. This is pretty embarrassing. I apologize.
We'll never rag you about it. You don't.
That's right. There we go. I'm going to go the old school way. Anybody else have trouble with cell phone reception in this metal building? I thought I sent this yesterday. Oh, thank you. You're a lifesaver. I appreciate that. Do you have the other one as well? Let's give a hand to Lee for this. I appreciate that. I thought I had sent all the emails I needed to this morning, but apparently not.
Before you start, Joe, you mentioned an important person that never gets any recognition is Lee. Lee is just a wealth of information and is always around. But I asked him when I became chairman I said, I wish I knew where all the commission had met. And within an hour, I had an email of every place the commission had ever met since he had been an employee. But Lee, thank you for all you do. You're behind the scenes and never see it. But let's give him a round of applause.
Austin, I apologize. Commissioners, I apologize for that snafu on my part. So Mr. Austin Bibb is the Wildlife Technician of the Year recipient for the Wildlife Division for 2019. He is a technician at the Lower Mississippi River Complex. He's stationed at Shelby Forest Wildlife Management Area. Austin began volunteering with us when he was in junior high school, and I know that looks like it was yesterday. He's a very young-looking man, and some of us are jealous of that, but he did. He started working with us at the John Tully WMA when he was 16. He helped band wood ducks. When he got into college, he helped with habitat management. He continued to help us throughout every summer, I think, of his college career. He graduated from UT Martin in May of 2014 with a BS degree in wildlife biology, and after graduating, Austin took a job as a seasonal technician in Kentucky, just over the border, until we hired him in 2015. Since his arrival, Austin has been at the forefront of our wild hog eradication program at Shelby Forest, and he's the main reason why Shelby Forest leads the statewide efforts in hog eradication. He spent countless hours dealing with trap construction, thermal surveillance, trapping and shooting. He developed new innovative ideas after the hogs became accustomed to our trapping techniques. In 2018, there were 438 hogs taken from Eagle Lake Refuge and Shelby Forest. And over the past 3 years, over 2,500 hogs have been eradicated from the surrounding area. So that's pretty big numbers that Austin had a key part in playing. He's done some cool things with the technology to help us track some things. He created a software program to help track the eradication efforts, and he uses this to educate surrounding folks, landowners that have problems, and help them dial into the best methods that we use to eradicate hogs. He also created a computer program to track the volunteer hours for staff, or for interns rather, from UT that were at Shelby Forest. And so he was able to work on this program that they completed on a daily basis, the number of hours they worked and the projects they worked on. So this is really fine scale detail to help be efficient with these interns that we have. He's been on the forefront of CWD sampling since before we had CWD, chronic wasting disease. He spent countless hours working check stations, collecting samples. He even took initiative to go to deer processors to collect additional samples as we were developing that process as well. Once we discovered CWD, he continued to work tirelessly to collect samples. He's been the lead employee at our mandatory check station, one of those sites, every weekend of the mandatory check station. And that's a big time commitment and a lot of responsibility at those individual sites for sure. Austin also manages 400 acres of moist flooded waterfowl habitat at the Eagle Lake Refuge, including managing moist soil plants and also some plantings of Japanese millet and corn. He maintains the pumps there that pump up the refuge. Obviously, ducks need water on the food to stay there. And this is a 7-day-a-week job for 2.5 months over holidays, Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's. And if you don't maintain those pumps and they go down or they get turned off, that water level could fluctuate. So he does that pretty much without complaint for about 2.5 months over the holidays, and also during hunting season, I might add. So he was recently recognized for his efforts by the Tennessee Wildlife Federation, where he received the prestigious Conservationist of the Year award at their banquet. So in summary, there really aren't words to explain the impact that this young man has made on the resources of the Lower Mississippi River Complex, whether it's 3 a.m. trapping hogs or midnight planting on a tractor because it's dry and you can get the tractor in there. Austin is always present, and he's making an impact. So let's celebrate Austin with this recognition, well deserved. Let's do it now.
Have you got the information?
I have the information. We'll do it now. All right, the 2019 Wildlife Biologist of the Year recipient is Mr. Chris Ogle. Chris is a Wildlife Manager 1 in the Biodiversity Program in Region 4. He's kind of incognito today. If you guys have ever been out in the field with him in the wintertime, he looks a little different than he does now, so I actually walked right past him this morning. Chris also began volunteering for the agency before he worked for us. He began volunteering in 2008 on a variety of projects, including bio blitzes, where we record data collection for numerous native species. Chris is a certified wildlife biologist. He has a BS degree in wildlife from UT and also a master's degree, which he received in 2011 in biological sciences. During his time in graduate school, Chris also volunteered with us. His master's degree focused on an island population of tiger salamanders on Henderson Island Refuge, and his findings, what he learned from his graduate work, helped us direct our current management for these salamanders and answer some questions about how these animals move on these islands. So kind of a neat little piece of kind of a unknown species, I guess, for a lot of us. In 2011, Chris was hired by the agency as a Wildlife Manager 1 at the North Cumberland WMA. He helped manage habitat, and he assisted with operational plans, wildlife censuses, road work, food plot work, and then wounded warrior hunts, among other things. In 2012, he transferred to the non-game survey position. There we go. Where he currently works. He's responsible for inventory and monitoring of hundreds of native species, and I'll pause and say that again, hundreds of native species, many being the rare species in the state, and especially in Tennessee's easternmost 21 counties. He assists with non-game survey work across the state, not just in East Tennessee, and he participates with inventory and monitoring activities with other state agencies as well as federal partners and NGOs. He's part of an ongoing snake fungal disease research through MTSU. He's helping with a multi-state effort to better understand green salamander populations and is assisting UT with collecting fungal samples from native amphibians. Chris has volunteered for additional training throughout his career, including a vertical ropes training class. That sounds like a fun thing to do. It's given him the ability to rappel into some caves where we haven't surveyed before. And so in some of these cave visits that he's done with his training, he's located a new endangered graybat hibernacula that's been, and also has been credited with multiple new county records and locations of other rare wildlife species in the state. Chris is a sought-after speaker and assists with non-game related courses for 4 universities in Tennessee. He's a commissioned officer. He teaches hunter education courses. He's an officer in the Tennessee Herpetological Society, and he's a member of the Southeastern Partners in Amphibian and Reptile Conservation. He's a deacon in his church. He's a 3rd-degree black belt and a dedicated husband and father of 4. So Chris, come on up here. In summary, Chris's career-long contributions and exemplary commitment to conservation and protecting our state's native species and their habitats are distinctive and worthy of this honor. So congratulations, Chris.
Make sure it's the right time.
So now on to the award that I really am prepared for, most excited about too as well. So before we celebrate this next award, I wanted to pause and take us on a short journey. So this is our 2nd time here at Lone Oaks, and this is fall. I think the last time we were here in December, so it's during hunting season. We've got 5 new commissioners now that we didn't have the last time we were here. So I want to take a trip back in time to December of last year. So let's start at the bottom left. I'll just read through these. Friday, December 14th, Tennessee preliminarily detects chronic wasting disease. We enact the CWD response plan. Go to the bottom right. Fish and Wildlife Commission have a special called meeting Thursday, December 20th. Now that's 5 days before Christmas. And you guys know these schedules, the chairman publishes the schedule for all these meetings early in the year, so we all know when these are. So go up to the next top right piece there. 10 deer confirmed as CWD positive, 3 additional preliminary positive. Are you guys feeling the emotion of this? Some of you, I know our staff are. Some of us are cringing and remembering and getting sweats. Just want to take us on a journey. So the top left there, Tennessee Fish and Wildlife Commission makes regulatory changes in regard to the CWD confirmation. So there was a rule change, emergency proclamation. Again, 5 days before Christmas, this happened. So for the new commissioners, this probably isn't sort of a gut punch like it was for those of us in the agency, our partners, hunters, taxidermists, processors, our officers in the field who are dealing with this every day, all day. But you kind of get the idea. It's a very emotional, very strong thing. It gave us goosebumps. It gave us shivers, a sigh of defeat as we all recall the day that we got the call that we had a positive here in Tennessee. This is one of those stories, you know, those stories that we're going to remember in our career. We're going to be told at retirement parties. They're going to have them in textbooks, at least in Tennessee universities. Remember when Tennessee first got this disease. These are the kind of stories that you never forget, unfortunately. But here's the good news, and here's the piece we want to celebrate next. The piece we're celebrating is that from that day on, from December 20th, and actually a few days before that when we got the call, our staff helped write a different story. Now, the ending is not different. Unfortunately, we aren't able to change the ending, but we're able to change a lot of things in the story. This new story that our staff are writing is a story of increased communication and teamwork in ways that the agency hadn't been required to work in the past. A story of thinking outside of the box. A story of learning. We all learn things, and we continue to learn things about science, about deer, about other things that we never have learned before. A story of working across division lines. Every division in the agency. Sometimes we feel like we're siloed, we're a little disjuncted. You know, we may not know what they do and what we do, and folks from all throughout the agency were working together in a super way. And even across agency lines, we worked with Department of Agriculture, Department of Environmental Conservation, and others. We work with non-government organization partners, and we also work with our primary partners, hunters, processors, and taxidermists in ways we had not in the recent past. So I thought it fitting to introduce a new award for the Wildlife Division this year that is the Team of the Year Award. Sorry, I forgot about these slides. So this is the CWD response. Once we found it, I shared with you that what the commission actions were and what the agency actions were, but we had three sort of responses. One is in the field, and you see folks there collecting samples from chronic wasting disease, from deer. And then I see the director there on the right. He's supervising everything, as he always does in a good fashion. We had information needs. There was so much unknown about chronic wasting disease. We knew some things. We had planned for some things. We have partners across the state lines that have dealt with this, but we needed information about Tennessee to get out. So we have a new website that was started last year, CWD in Tennessee. And if you have any questions about CWD, that's where you should start. We have information about what to do in Tennessee in that right picture there. And then we have the policy, which is kind of what we shared a minute ago. We held a huge public meeting, and there was several hundred people there. We had dozens and dozens of agency staff. Amy Snider was one of the ones that helped work on that, and our officers were there. Everybody wanted to be there. This was this huge problem that we faced. And again, people pulled together in ways we hadn't done in recent history. So it's it was a great agency effort. And this is a slide I shared with my staff at a meeting this past summer to celebrate the CWD response, right? This is a new challenge. We haven't had anything like this in the Wildlife Division in a long time. This is one of those sort of career-altering historical pieces. And again, I'll just go through these quickly. We pulled together towards a common goal. This is a moving target, and really, it's still a moving target. There's some things that Chuck's going to share today that we've got to figure out. We've got to have new ideas to begin to manage CWD differently. We shared ideas, relied on experts. There was sacrificial behavior. The reason I'm so proud about giving this award out is because of staff. You know, we have families. It was Christmas holidays. There were people that gave up their hunting season plans. There were people that had duck blinds that didn't ever go to them again after we found this. Really, really intense personal sacrifices. Working late into the day, working early in the morning, thinking about stuff, staying awake at night, thinking about this. So lots and lots and lots of sacrificial behavior that we don't see when we're here at these meetings that are fairly short. Again, we worked across division lines, agency lines. We stayed professional. You know, we've lost our lack of sleep. We have lack of sleep. There's high stress. We don't know what to do. People are throwing ideas in there, but people were professional about this. They said, that's a great idea, or that's not such a great idea. Let's take the good one, and it doesn't matter who said it. And so I'm real proud of how that happened at all levels. Again, our partners were key in this. And at these public meetings that we've had and continue to have, hunters are a key in this. And we've said this over again, and commissioners, you all know this. Without hunters, we could not manage chronic wasting disease. And so we've got to maintain that. We had great relationship with hunters. Our processors, the folks that process deer, for a majority, I think 60-some% of deer hunters take their animals to processors to get them cut up and packaged. And these folks have been just as sacrificial in their behavior and just as professional, asking us questions and then wanting to help, volunteering their help. So we appreciate hunters, processors, and taxidermists. And also the commission. You guys had the special called meeting. You've had numerous calls from hunters. You've brought a lot of things to us. So with no further ado, I'd like to introduce to you the 2019 Team of the Year Award to the Chronic Wasting Disease Response Team. And I'm going to call them up individually. We have a plaque. Kirk's going to hand out the plaques to you guys. So we'll call them up one by one, and I guess we'll get a group picture at the end. And maybe if we could save our applause till the end. So the CWD Response Team Award is given in recognition of superior teamwork in responding to the discovery of chronic wasting disease in Tennessee through positive attitude, careful planning, integrating a statewide perspective, and commitment to clear, proactive, and open communications. And we'll just start. First recipient, Dr. Dan Grove, who's a co-op position with UT. Dr. Grove, if you'd come forward. This guy's been invaluable. I think everybody in this room knows how invaluable Dan has been to the agency. And if you guys could just stand in line. Chuck Yoest, CWD Coordinator. James Kelly, Deer Program Leader. Jeremy Denison, Region 1 Big Game Biologist. Daniel Stanfield, Region 1 Big Game Biologist. Aren't these a fine-looking bunch of guys? They don't look like this when they're out in the field. Amy Snider, Region 1, not sure exactly, Outreach and Communication. Amy was on the radio, on TV. She was on the radio and TV yesterday. Just a great partner on the team. Jenifer Wisniewski, who's not here with us. She's the Chief of Outreach and Communication. Lynn Barrett, GIS. Lynn, every map you've seen of chronic wasting disease with a dot or with a circle around it, Lynn created that for us. And she's another one that would work on a Saturday if you needed to, or 8 o'clock at night, she'd send you an email. So we appreciate what Lynn does for us. Buddy Brian is here to accept the CWD team, response team for the Region 1 boating and law enforcement staff. Let me pause here and just say a few words. You know, everybody with a green truck gets questions at gas stations and wherever you are by members of the public. And this was, questions came out like you've never seen before when we had chronic wasting disease. And these folks with guns and badges, people know them in the community. People were in Walmart out of uniform and they saw one of these guys or gals and they knew who they were, and so they'd stop them on their personal time. You know, this is a big deal for hunters, a lot of unknown information, just like for staff. But Region 1 law enforcement staff, we could not have done it without you. They were the point people interacting between the public, hunters, processors, and taxidermists, and the agency. So kudos to them. I also have 3 more, and I hope this is a bit of a surprise. Officer Ty Inmon. These 3 gentlemen were in the first 3 positive counties, Fayette, Hardin, and Madison County, and they have been incredibly generous with their time. Officer Bubba Spencer, and then Sam Bedwell. These 3 gentlemen have worked with us. We've learned a lot through them about what the public know and don't know and understand. And again, they've sacrificed their family time and other things. So let's give the 2019 Team of the Year a big round of applause here. Mr. Chairman, that concludes my presentation.
Okay. This time I'm going to call on Don King, if he would come up for presentation.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity. I'm kind of filling in for Assistant Director Bobby Wilson today in this role. He really wanted to be here to say a word about a friend of the agency that we've lost recently. And with that, I'd just like to roll this clip real quickly.
I have some sad news to share with you this morning.
A member of the News Channel 5 family passed away over the weekend. Hugh McNaughton, the longtime host of Southern Woods and Waters on News Channel 5 Plus, died suddenly on Saturday. Hugh was an avid outdoorsman and a true people person and was kind and generous. Our thoughts go out to Hugh's wife, Debbie, along with all his friends and family. Visitation will be held tonight from 4 to 9 and again tomorrow from 9 to 4 at Reed's Chapel in Lexington, Tennessee. The funeral will follow. Hugh McNaughton was only 59 years old.
We didn't want to let this meeting pass without recognizing the friendship that we've had with Hugh over the years, and you know, the countless times he's had our agency folks on his TV show and on the radio. We just appreciate him. Kind of had my folks back at the office dig through some files and found out that Hugh has been a hunter ed instructor since 1995. So no telling how many folks he's taught hunter ed over the years, and was always open to having us on his show or share a good word about the outdoors with everybody he met. And we will certainly miss Hugh and the big smile that he always had. So anyway, I just appreciate the opportunity to say a couple words about him. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. Hugh will definitely be missed. He lived in Lexington, the county next to me, but just very involved with the outdoors, getting very involved with the high school fishing, always positive for these kids and having them on the show, and we're just going to be very missed in our agency and in the outdoor industry. Before we get into business, I've got one more announcement. You may not know I'm going to do this, but one of our commissioners, Tony Sanders, most of you know, has a radio show. But Tony Sanders Outdoors just yesterday was awarded the 2019 Excellence in Craft Award, the second place by the Southeastern Outdoor Press Association. So this happened last night in Oxford, Mississippi. But Commissioner Sanders, I'd just like to tell you congratulations, and that's a big honor.
Maybe when I die, they'll say something nice about it.
I think we will. Well, I hope hope I'm around. So.
No, he was a great guy, and I appreciate it's 13 years of hard work to finally be acknowledged by your peers. So.
Thank you. All right, we're going to go into some committee business. I would like to remind the public that if you have a comment to make, we limit those to 3 minutes. Please keep your comments to that subject. If we're talking about CWD, it's not the right time to come up and talk about Asian carp. There will be a time at the end of the meeting that we'll ask for public comment on any other subject. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Commissioner Gardner, who chairs our Wildlife Committee.
Good morning, everybody. I'd also like to just say that the CWD team, it was impressive what they did, and I'm glad the agency saw fit to recognize them. It's really been a scramble on many people's levels, and so I just echo much of what Joe said during the presentation. With that, I'd like to call Chuck Yoest to give us a CWD update.
Okay, good morning, Commissioners. Good to see you all again. It's become a regular practice each month to provide a chronic wasting disease update. And there's so much that transpires with this issue in a given month that it's a little challenging to prepare to provide an update. So each time I just do like I'm going to today, and I'm just going to kind of spread it out like dinner on the ground. So here's what's happened since the last time that we've met. You may recall from different communications since the meeting last month that we now have 2 additional high-risk counties of Crockett and Gibson County, and that was a result of the Madison County clinical positive that was discovered and the fact that it was within 10 miles of those counties. Now, we have not, or I'll back up and say that the only thing that changed by default is that now, what has changed because of that is there are now wildlife feeding restrictions in those 2 counties, and then also carcass exportation restrictions. But besides that, that's all that's changed. And I have on this map, it's just a signification of the addition of those 2 high-risk counties, and then just making it obvious that they are not yet a part of Unit CWD, so therefore the Unit CWD regulations do not apply there, or the hunting regulations for Unit CWD do not apply there, and it's still Unit L. And we are not here today recommending that we make that change yet. And we've got several reasons why we're not making that recommendation right now, and I won't go through the details of that today unless you guys want to do that during the question and answer section or portion of this presentation. So I'll hold off on that unless you guys want to hear more about it at the end. So this is a map of our current positives, and this should look familiar to you, but the red dots signifying the positives that have been found this deer season, and the gold or yellow color is from last year's season. And I draw your attention to that Madison County sample and the 10-mile buffer around it, and you'll see that the 10 miles is just barely brings in Crockett and Gibson County. I believe the distances are 0.2 miles and 0.6 miles. That's as far as it went. Some other things of significance is if we've continued with a great sampling effort. Out of the 600 deer checked in the affected area, being all of those 10 counties, high risk and positive counties, we've been able to sample 429 of the 610 harvested. There have been 17 additional positives this season. So if you combine last season with this season, it's a total of 203. And we've, even since the last meeting, have been able to cut down an additional day on the turnaround time for testing results, and we want to continue to do that. So just proud to share that, because that's a huge, even one day is a huge accomplishment, considering all that it takes to provide that service for hunters. Some other things of significance is a lot of educational efforts. We've planned 2 more public meetings for those counties that have just been brought into this situation. And then we've been doing a lot of training within the agency. We haven't had the opportunity to do much education in-house because we've been so focused on public meetings and public outreach. So when things slowed down at all, we took that opportunity to do that, and have had some good trainings within the agency in Regions 2, 3, and 4 recently. And then we've also produced a hunting guide specific to Unit CWD that's available here today, and is becoming a really good resource for us. So we're happy about that, and want to give the communications division, communications and outreach, a lot of credit for pulling that off in quick order. Some other big items that have been consuming our time is the administration of earn-a-buck and replacement bucks. That's a new thing for us, and new systems, and it takes a lot to administer those, to know who's earned a buck or who's earned a replacement buck, get them proper notification, and that's evolved a lot of divisions within the agency, and it is going well. And I look forward to soon being able to say that we've got those systems exactly where we need them. We're very close already, so that's really good and a huge agency effort. We've also Dr. Grove deserves a lot of credit for this. He's worked to acquire a research grant, a National Conservation Needs Research Grant. So we'll be partnering with the Southeastern Wildlife Disease Cooperative and doing some research soon in the affected area. And it's some research that's going to be very important to how we manage CWD. And it's specifically looking at the potential transmission of CWD from does to fawns as before they give birth to those fawns. So it's a study focused on the natural transmission of CWD. We know quite a bit about transmission within research facilities or research settings, but not in the natural environment out in the wild. So we'll be looking at that. And we furthered our discussions and plannings and transitioning to our in-state lab with the Department of Agriculture. We just met with them this last week to decide exactly how we're going to accomplish that. Contracts in place. They're waiting on equipment to arrive, but that's moving forward as well. Well, a lot of effort, and especially the Region 1 folks, putting a lot of effort into planning for the mandatory check station weekends. Again, those are the 2nd and 3rd of November and the 9th and 10th. And just to remind you that not all of the CWD affected counties are involved in this. It's only mandatory in unit CWD, or in other words, it excludes Crockett, Fayette, Hardin, and Gibson counties. But otherwise, out of those 10 counties, they are included. So another big issue that's been extra challenging is the landfill issue. You know, the last time you guys met, I shared with you that it looked like there was a new policy by privately owned landfills in West Tennessee that they weren't going to accept positive deer, and we were just beginning to decide how to manage that situation. So the issue is that they weren't going to accept those positive deer, and with the inability of knowing test results before deer need to be disposed of, this basically meant that no deer were going to be disposed of in West Tennessee in landfills because of that new policy. Now, this issue goes back a little further than September, because in June we started, I was encouraged by the Region 1 staff back then in the summer, early summer, to start a dialogue with TDEC, because they were just getting the sense that this could be an issue for us this fall. So we began those conversations, and fast forward to September 4th, TDEC communicated to us that was the case. However, in the leading up to that, it looked like all indications were good that this wasn't going to be the policy of the landfills, and then we got the surprise on September 4th that it was, and September 21st was the beginning of the statewide archery season, which will result in a significant amount of deer harvest. So all of a sudden, we had a really big issue in a short amount of time to address. There's some more details around the timeline that are significant, but I'll save those for another time. But the point is, this became a really big issue for us, and didn't have a whole lot of time to prepare for it. However, we do have a good response to it, and I'm confident with where we are. But as a result of it, we had several different groups of stakeholders reach out to us for assistance, specifically processors, taxidermists, and individual hunters. And we were concerned already because of the potential of indiscriminate disposal of deer in high volumes across the area, across West Tennessee. Because if you think about it, some of these processors are processing a couple of thousand deer a year. And, they're used to being able to put those in a dumpster that's then taken by a disposal company to a landfill. And that no longer was to occur. So then they would have to figure out what to do with that waste. And we wanted to help ensure that was disposed of in the most sanitary way that we could for disease management purposes. And then also just to provide relief to those stakeholders and their needs. We also knew how significant of an issue this was because we've begun some surveys that have preliminary results have showed us that 63% of the people in West Tennessee in the affected area are utilizing processors. So just the processors alone make this a big significant issue. So we asked, TWA requested that a working group be developed of us because of the hunting component of this, but because it is a disposal issue, the regulatory authorities on disposal in Tennessee are TDEC and the Tennessee Department of Agriculture. And the Tennessee Department of Agriculture is applicable because this is regarding animals, and they're the subject matter experts on animal disposal, whereas TDEC is the subject matter expert on solid waste disposal. So those groups agreed, and we formed a partnership with those agencies, plus UT Extension because of Dr. Grove's involvement in the group. And what we've done, this is going to be a short summary of what's happened, but I can tell you a lot of work and meetings and conversations happened to lead up to this. So just because it seems short in presentation, it's a very significant plan that's been developed. But according to the AFWA, the Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies, best management practices for CWD, and according to the Department of Agriculture's policy that they have for dead animal disposal, we established a carcass management site. So in other words, we've created an area where we've gone out and we've found a suitable area for deer disposal and are following best practices for disease management purposes and to protect the environment. So we've gone and we've done that. And this site will be utilized until the partners agree that it's time to move on to another site, if necessary, depending on the demand for this site. So this is not an ideal situation, but we believe it is the best option for an immediate solution to help these stakeholders and to prevent disease spread. The site that was selected was Wolf River WMA. Some reasons why it was selected is a state-owned property and it's managed by TWRA, so we're able to be on site with equipment and staff, and that's just a necessary evil of management of a site like this. But it's also in the heart of the CWD affected area. This area is going to always have to. We're always going to be managed for CWD in this area, so that was taken into consideration. The soil composition there includes clay, which is known to bind prions, and to help prevent those from being in the effluent or the runoff of an area like this. And then this is an area that can be gated and fenced to help obstruct unauthorized entry by the public and to exclude wildlife, which would be important. So the long-term plan, so that's the short-term immediate plan, temporary, and then this is the long-term plan, is where we're gonna do a feasibility study on the ability to use incinerators for disposal. So we're going through the motions with TDEC to make that happen and see how effective that is. So we're considering the use of those incinerators long-term, and we're going to re-engage the landfill companies along with TDEC to see if there can be a compromise or to ease the landfill operators' fears and hopefully have that be a long-term disposal option again for us. And then there's even discussions of potentially using landfills just outside of the affected area. If that's what needs to happen, that would probably require some kind of action by the commission because of the current restrictions that we have. I'm sure there's a mechanism for that, and that would probably need to occur. If so, it would probably mean that we would transfer waste or deer parts from the current affected counties to a nearby county just outside the area. So that's the long-term plan. And this is a constantly an evolving challenge for us, and we're going to continue to work with that working group to provide the best solutions that we can to help those stakeholders and for best management of CWD. And that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Chuck. Any questions on the commission? This is to remind y'all, it's not committee, so anybody can ask whatever they want. Anybody?
On the 17 positives, did you have a breakdown on male, female, age, or anything?
Yes, sir. Yeah, we have it. I don't have it to share with you today, but yeah, I can gladly provide that to you if you'd like to.
All right, I've got a question. I understand, and we discussed earlier in previous meetings, that we weren't going to test quite as much and do the mandatory check-in in Fayette and Hardin. But I'm not sure why we're not doing Crockett and Gibson, since you just recently added those. Why wouldn't we put the mandatory check-in up there to try to figure out where our line is? I'm just wondering what the logic is.
Yeah, well, primarily we've already increased the surveillance that we're going to do in those counties. So the result will be that there will be more samples coming from those counties already, even with you guys not having to take action to establish that expectation those weekends.
Okay, so you just don't need the mandatory check-in to attain your sample goal?
We think we're going to get what we need without having to take that step. Yes, sir.
All right. Any other questions?
I have one.
County King?
You mentioned for the future, the incinerators might be part of the future plan, but those still be incinerators that only get like to 800 degrees, not the required 1,800 degrees? Is that right?
I'm not going to directly answer your question, but I'm going to work my way to what I think you're looking for. One of the challenges with incinerators is finding ones that will get hot enough to absolutely, without a doubt, denature the prions. And the threshold that's commonly referenced is 1,800 degrees to ensure that you do that. And just to the practicality of this forces us to look at portable incinerators, which typically don't reach those temperatures. For example, the unit that we're looking at currently, we would run that unit at about 1,300 degrees. So as an extra measure, we would have to collect the ash from that incinerator and ensure that we sanitary dispose of that ash as well, just to be extra careful. And that's consistent with what other states are doing. My counterpart in Mississippi, I asked him that very question about because we asked them for a recommendation on their unit, and they said, well, here's what we recommend. And I said, well, why are you recommending that unit? Because it doesn't reach that 1,800 degrees. And he says, well, because you're going to have to use portable units. They just don't get that hot, and or the ones that you can get your hands on. And you need to take these additional efforts, which may include landfilling, which will be part of the discussion with them.
Go ahead. Commissioner Ripley.
Units, are you talking about units that would be truck-borne or something like that, totally portable, or?
That's a great question. What it means is that they can be installed on a utility-type trailer that could be pulled by a truck on a standard size that could go up and down any road legally. So what I would like a flatbed trailer, and it's not portable in the sense that the actual unit has wheels on it, but we install it on the trailer permanently, so the portableness is due to the trailer.
Any other questions from the commission? Questions from the public? Comments? Thank you, Chuck.
Commissioner Garner, I got one thing.
Oh, okay.
I think it's important for people to realize, and Chuck, you might could attest to this. I know I've gotten a lot of phone calls about incineration and the waste, and really we're not in the waste business. TWRA is not. Could you explain our responsibility as far as an agency, as far as disposing of these carcasses? Whether we actually have any, that would be mine.
Yes, sir. And if I don't do a sufficient job, I'd ask Chris Richardson probably to add to my comments. And The short version is we don't have a responsibility regarding disposal. However, we're concerned about this issue for disease management purposes. We're concerned about the affected stakeholders, so we want to help provide relief. However, disposal is not within our regular authority, and that authority resides with different agencies that are engaged in this planning.
That answers the question. Thank you. Also, you know, there's a lot of information out there, and you hear, I'm reading some right now I got today in an email. You know, it says the Federal Center for Disease Control and the Tennessee Wildlife Resource Agency has advised that everyone should avoid consuming deer from areas with the disease for fear of it spreading the disease to humans, although no known humans have contracted the disease of yet. As far as I know, the only advice we've given would be do not eat infected deer. We definitely haven't said don't eat deer from that area. I just want to make that clear because stuff like this, it hurts everyone when you release false information like that. And it's a big deal. It's a big deal to our hunters. They're going to go out and not eat the deer even if it tests negative, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with eating that deer. So anyway, I just wanted to clarify that and make that clear. That if that were to get out, and you know this may go out publicly.
Yeah, that's a legitimate concern.
What I read, but it's totally false. We have never said that.
Right. That's right. Our official stance is whatever the Centers for Disease Control recommends, or whatever their guidance is, and their guidance on this issue is that if you're hunting an area known to have CWD, that you have deer tested before you consume it, and if it tests positive, then do not consume that meat, and that is our policy as well.
Thank you, Chuck. That's all.
All right, thank you, Chairman. And Chuck, we appreciate the briefing as always. Great job. Thank you again. You and Dr. Grove and James and y'all's whole team here. It's been impressive to see what y'all been able to do with this. And let's see, we'll move on to our next thing. I've got Dr. David Bueller with an update on the Wild Turkey Project. Thanks, sir.
Well, Commissioners, I appreciate this opportunity to come back and give you an update on the Turkey Project. I recognize that there's some new commissioners here, so I'm going to go over some old ground for the long-term commissioners and some new ground for the new folks. Kind of bring you up to date. We're about halfway through this project. We've got 2.5 years of data collected, and I think we've got a lot of the key answers that we're seeking, but some of the analyses are still preliminary, and so we'll be continuing to analyze the data, continuing to track turkeys. This has been a large cooperative effort with TWA and with UT. And on the UT staff, there's 5 professors working on it, myself, Craig Harper, our wildlife extension specialist, Rick Gerhold is vet medicine disease specialist, Dr. Pujol, human dimensions, and a bunch of graduate students. Actually, there's 4 faculty members, a bunch of graduate students working as well. And then a host of TWA folks, Region 2, officers, managers, biologists, and the Nashville staff. So this is a large cooperative effort. And as I said, these results are preliminary, but I think we've got the beginnings of the story to tell you today. So we're here because we're interested in wild turkeys. This is a really important resource. And we've undergone this graph. I was here in 1991 when finding a place to hunt turkeys and killing a turkey was a pretty big deal. And we've gone through this boom where anybody could pretty much kill a turkey if they were any good at all. And you know, really we've really succeeded in the turkey restoration. Since 2005, statewide, the harvest has been pretty stable. We're kind of at this maintenance phase where we're trying to keep a good thing going. But the real concern is from some of the Region 1 and Region 2 counties, and specifically some of the counties in Region 2 and the south end, where they were really good turkey hunting counties historically, but for the last 10 to 15 years, the harvest has decreased really significantly, in some cases over 50%. So our study was really developed because we want to understand what's going on in this picture. Important to remember that turkey harvest and population size are not exactly one in the same, and so when we look at, this year was a relatively good year, harvest was up a little bit. You look at turkey harvest, it reflects the gobbler abundance, it reflects what the hunters are doing, it reflects the weather during the season, especially early in the season, and then it also reflects the harvest regulations, which you all have control over. So just because the harvest goes up or down in a year may reflect what the population is doing, or it could reflect a bunch of these other things. So the objectives of our project have been to monitor turkey reproduction, survival, and habitat use, monitor harvest, monitor what the hunters are doing and what the hunters think, conduct disease surveillance, and then ultimately help the agency develop alternative management strategies and alternative regulatory strategies. So here's our study sites, Wayne, Lawrence, Giles, Murray, and Bedford counties, and we're actually working on about 100,000 acres, and we've got 10 individual focal sites where we trap and monitor. I think there's like 1,000 landowners that are involved, so this is really one of the largest turkey projects ever to be undertaken, and it's been a daunting task, but with our partnership, we pulled it together. So for each of our individual sites, we go in January. TWA officers will help us start baiting and monitoring these sites. We come in with rocket nets, and our goal is to have 10 hens and 10 gobblers and jakes radio tagged on each site. And basically you sit on bait and wait till the birds are coming in, and then shoot the net and jump on them, put the radios on them, and off you go. And we've been very successful at doing this. Over the years, over the last 3 trapping seasons, we've captured over 500 birds total. We've radio tagged 366, and we've got, I think, about 125 birds on the air right now. So we're in really good shape year to year in terms of meeting our goals of tracking about 100 hens and 100 gobblers and jakes a year. So it's important to realize that on the reproduction side, we're really looking at a supply chain. And if you can think of an industrial process where we start with hens, and on the end of the chain, we get poults that are surviving to adulthood. We're looking at this entire process, and step by step, we're trying to estimate the relative success of the population and understand what's going on if there's a problem. But this is not a simple thing, so there's a lot of steps in the chain of supply for turkeys. So nest monitoring, we radio tag about 100 hens. We follow them to the nest. When they start incubating, we monitor daily of those nests, and then when they hatch, we go in and we look at it. If they fail, we'll see something like this over here, where the eggs are scattered all over the place, and if it's a successful nest, the eggs are all right in the cup of the nest, and everything's in order. And then once they've hatched out, then we can actually also monitor the poults. So we'll go in on the first couple of days post-hatching. The hen is still brooding the poults. We go in the dark just before first light with flashlights. We find the hen. We flush her off the poults. The poults scatter, and then we grab them by hand. And you catch them by hand, you put a little radio on them, you put them back out there by the hen, and the hen readily adopts all those poults back, and then we're good to go because we've got the hen radioed and we've got those poults radioed. And you can see we've radio tagged over 100 poults. So day by day, once those poults are radio tagged, we can track where they go and what happens to them in terms of survival or mortality events. Then we also do a bunch of habitat work. And the habitat work is really designed to look at specifically, what are the key habitat parameters that are linked to nest survival or poult survival, and things that we can manage. So this is a slide from a graduate student. I'm going to step it down to commissioner level. You know, you never in a public setting show a slide like this, okay? It is way too complicated. Most people just close their eyes. But there's a wealth of information about the supply chain on here, and I'm going to share it with you with your hopefully careful attention. So first, let's look at the blue bars right here, and that's the initial nesting rate. Now, on the left side of this graph, all of these studies were studies that have stable or increasing populations, okay? So that's where things were going good in the recent past. Everything over on the right-hand side, here's studies where populations are declining, and then on the far right, we've got Tennessee, our study. So if you look at a good nesting rate level of 90%, all of these studies that are stable or increasing have 90% of the hens nesting. You look at Tennessee, we're at about 75%. So we're down 15% on the nesting rate. So right in that first stage, we're losing 15% of our productivity. All right, so let's do it again. Let's look at re-nesting rate. So when turkeys fail, they re-nest, but that not all of them will re-nest. So let's look here at a good re-nest rate from stable and increasing populations of about 50%. In almost all those studies where they're stable or increasing, half the hens will re-nest at least once. And then we look at Tennessee over here, and we're down at 40%. So again, we're 10% low on the re-nest rate. And then finally, let's look at the green bars, which is overall nest success. And nest success for stable or increasing populations was consistently above the line of about 35%. And here we are in Tennessee, we're at 29%, so we're about 5% low for our nesting success. So 3 key parameters that we're tracking, we're down on each of those 3 by anywhere from 5 to 15% individually. All right, what about clutch size? Well, the same sort of thing, same setup. Most of these stable or increasing populations have a initial clutch of at least 11. And then here we are at 9.3 in Tennessee. So we're losing again about 1.5 birds in terms of the clutch size. And then the end of the story, the poult survival, if you look at the studies that have been done where they have stable or increasing populations, you need at least 30% poult survival to sustain a population. And you can see our 3 years of data. 2017 was really poor, 6%. 2018 was a bit better at 24, and 2019 was about 21. But all 3 years are a little bit, especially 2017, but the last 2 years are still underneath what we need for stable populations. So the other piece of this is adult survival. And so you've got the productivity side, you have the survival side. And in the survival side, our hen survival, adult hen survival is 64.5%. That's actually okay. There's not a problem there. And then the gobbler survival is all driven by harvest, but there's nothing other than harvest. There's nothing serious going on with the gobblers that is reducing their survival in a way that would be concerning. So adult survival is okay. So everything going on with this species in terms of the population is related to reproduction. So why are they declining in Tennessee? Primarily because every stage of the supply chain we're down at least 10%. And these effects accumulate down that chain. So it's not just we're down 10% overall, we're down 10, 10, 10, 10, 10. Then ultimately, coming out the end of the supply, we've got less than 2 poults per hen being produced, and that's not enough to sustain populations. So I think, we're going to collect 2 more years of data on this, but we know the answer of why are these populations declining. It's because reproduction is insufficient to sustain these populations. And there's a whole variety of things going on there. So, okay, we said reproduction is insufficient. What can we do about it? Well, reproduction is driven by habitat conditions and predation. So the theory is that if you have quality habitat, then you can overcome some of the shortcomings in predation. So we are now entering a phase of the project where we are focusing habitat prescriptions on individual hens to try to make things better for them. And Craig Harper, our extension specialist, he's actually a national expert on habitat management, and he is going in with Clint Borum in Region 2 and specifically prescribing what needs to be done literally on a field-by-field basis. Let me give you an example of how this works. So here's Yanali, a unit at Yanali, and these green and white dots are where all these hens nested in 27 and 2018. And in 27 and 2018, none of those hens out of 17 nests produced one successful brood that made it to independence. So there's a problem there. Well, Craig and Clint have gone in there and they've developed habitat prescriptions on the lower fields at Yanali, and Tommy Edwards has implemented those things. And we've got one season so far of response, but so far, one of our radio-tagged hens produced a brood to independence, and several other broods came down into those fields this year. So it really looks like the birds have responded successfully, and we've turned things around in terms of brood survival. So we're doing this on several public and private lands in the area, and these experiments it's literally one by one, implement and then focus on given hens and see what they do and see if we've actually made things better. Then ultimately, we'll take what we learned from this and give it back to the wildlife managers and private landowners and say, this is what you need to do if you want to make things better for turkey reproduction on your property. So we also do a lot of hunter surveys, and it's important to recognize that the hunters obviously are our clients for what we're doing here today, and we're trying to come up with regulations that provide quality hunting opportunities and high levels of hunter satisfaction, regardless of the population that we've got. So the population we have today, this is what we have to work with, and hunters are very aware and concerned about where the turkey hunting stands in those counties. We've done 3 years of surveys, and we've got I think over 1,000 survey respondents now from those counties, and their concern level is about at 90% in terms of being worried about turkey hunting in their region. So there's no doubt that there's a high level of interest and a high level of concern. The interesting thing is, I'm not going to go into all the details of their responses, but they are willing to work with y'all if they think changes in regulations will make things better. So things like changing the bag limit, changing the timing of the season, making it so that you can only shoot adult birds, those sorts of questions seem to have a fair amount of support, and they are willing to consider it if they think that it would make it better for turkey hunting in their region. So I think there's room for regulatory change, or to at least consider regulatory change to address some of these concerns, and the hunters seem to be on board with it. We also have a major disease component with Dr. Rick Gerhold, and I'm not going to go into all the details, but they've been doing really wide-scale, intensive disease surveillance, in part because the original concern was that chicken litter being spread out in the fields in the region were spreading disease to turkeys. And you know, they've seen evidence of disease. They've seen exposure to these diseases by adult birds, but generally the tests haven't shown, we haven't come up with a smoking gun where it's a clear, definitive evidence that a given disease is actually limiting the population. So that's, I think, the key result to date from the disease surveillance is these birds are being exposed to a lot of things, but there's no clear evidence that any one disease is responsible for the decline in populations. So our preliminary conclusions, it appears that turkey populations are declining because of poor productivity. The experimental habitat management, I think, shows promise for addressing some of those productivity issues. The hunters are very concerned, but they're also very on board with, you know, what can be done for having higher levels of hunter satisfaction and hunter opportunities. And finally, it looks like there's a bunch of diseases out there that affect everything, but there's no single disease responsible for this decline. And with that, I will gladly ask any questions you might have.
Thank you, Dr. Buehler. Appreciate it. I guess I want to start off with the first question, and it has to do with the slide you had on regulation. Previously, I've been on the commission, this is my third year, and previously when we met and had discussions on this particular project, it's always been kind of the idea being not to mess with the regulations during the turkey study.
Right.
For fear of skewing the results
Yeah, that's
and
right.
the data for the test.
Right.
So having said that, and then going with the slide that you had up there, what are you really saying there? To maintain what we have as always, so your data's consistent?
No, that's a good question, because, you know, in the past, we really wanted to kind of get this baseline in terms of hunter harvest and hunter effort and what the populations were doing. But I think we're at the point now that, you know, it's a time where we could seriously talk about changing regulations. And the spring meeting would be a good time to really look at that. Yeah, so from a study point of view, there's no reason not to consider regulatory changes. And there may actually be some advantages, because if you did it maybe experimentally in a county or two, then we could actually evaluate what changes those.
And you have data in this very same study that says reducing the number of gobblers harvested, because that's all we're hunting now is gobblers. We did away with the hen hunt in the fall. Is going to significantly increase nesting success?
No, see, that, we don't have data on that. And I don't, you know, that's the one issue that I personally don't think is going to actually bear fruit. But the one key question is if you move the season back a week, will that increase the hen nesting rate and ultimately the number of young that are being produced? And the only way you could actually test that would be, or evaluate it, would be to do it experimentally.
Okay, well, thank you for the answers, and I'm gonna turn it over and let the rest of the commission ask theirs. I've got some more, but I'll hold off for a little while,
Okay.
let everybody else have a shot at you. So, who's got a question or a comment? Anybody? Commissioner Box?
Thank you, Commissioner Gardner. It sounds like, too, this overall, it's not really one particular, from what I've gathered, one particular reason why the population is down. And the habitat management, it sounds like, has been a positive effort as far as y'all's part. It has some good information and showing proof of helping. But are there any other areas? What other areas are y'all going to do habitat management together? Just certain areas? That I'm not making sense.
Well, what we're doing is, for our 10 focal study sites,
Okay.
we're identifying landowners who are interested, and then we're also doing it on WMAs.
Okay.
So there's a couple of WMAs involved, and we've got a list of about 6 or 8 landowners so far that are coming into this year we're planning to manage for. So we're kind of building that sort of experiment as we go.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Chairman Holbert.
I just kind of reiterate what Commissioner Garner said. In your reasons that were up there, nowhere in those reasons was we're killing too many gobblers. So that I just want to.
No, I think, yeah, that's accurate. I mean, yeah, well, we haven't looked specifically at that, but, you know, in 2018, 40% of our gobblers were harvested. The first year and this last year, we had 20%. But, you know, I don't think we're seeing any evidence that the relative harvest rate for gobblers is really impeding reproduction.
Okay.
To what extent is reproduction success related to weather and just cyclical weather changes?
Well, that's a good question. There's no doubt that if you have, you know, one-day-old poults that are on the ground that are like that, and you have a significant rain event, you know, mortality is pretty likely. So when we go through a stage where we have these large rain events in late May, early June, that is a bad thing for virtually any nesting game bird. And so, you know, and as you well know, we've had some really wet Junes. I'm sure those wet Junes are not good. I'm waiting for a normal year so that we can actually get some normal weather data to look at reproduction without those sorts of events.
Thank you.
Commissioner Stroud.
Predators. Is there a way to tell, or do you know if there, what percentage of these nests are being ruined by predators?
Well, we evaluate the nests for sign, and you generally could tell just based on the sign whether it's mammalian or avian, or even snake-based. There's very little snake predation that we've recorded on turkey eggs. That
What's the most? What animal is killing these turkeys?
Well, I would think probably raccoons would be a really significant predator. You know, the hen will defend a nest at a certain point, but all those mammalian predators are taking the lion's share of the nest failures. And then once the poults are on the ground, then it's everything. Because, you know, Cooper's hawks, you know, and you start getting into avian predation once the poults are on the ground.
But as far as the eggs, it's things like raccoons and stuff. Right.
Raccoons, skunks, possums.
Okay. Which I think as a commission we need to look at if there's anything we can have an effect on with these things. You know, is our hunting regulations, trapping regulations, are they up to date on what your data is? Is there anything that we can be changing? I think we need to look at that. Dennis?
Well, just as, you know, I think a lot of other states have looked at that question, and I think, you know, most of the literature would suggest the only way you could positively affect reproduction would be if you did something right during the nesting season, literally during the months of, you know, late April, May, and early June. And of course, that's not our trapping season. And so, you know, that's the problem, is that if you do over winter trapping, I don't think you're going to necessarily have much of an effect.
That's my point.
You'd have to get all the way into literally in May.
Yeah, which is, again, what I'm saying is that we need to look at that, because if we can, you know, have any impact on this by just some regulations, some seasons changes, those kind of things, I think we need to look at that, Dennis.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay.
Commissioner Stroud, any other questions, comments? I've got one concerning the harvest of hay. It always seems to be right around the time where the hens are on the nest.
Right.
I mean, for their first cut of hay, and I just wonder, in your study, how much impact is that having on nesting success when that nest is disturbed by agriculture?
Yeah, so if you look at the timing of it, the incubation starts on average April 21st, a 28-day cycle, say a month. So May 21st is when those poults are typically hitting the ground. So May 21st until the first week in June. And so that first cutting of hay does coincide with it. On the farms that we're working on, we haven't lost that many nests due to that. But I mean, we're talking maybe 5% of the nests total. But I don't think that necessarily means that that's not a contributing factor, because, you know, our farms are a little bit different, I think, than maybe the average cattle producer.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
That's all I have. Dr. Bueller, appreciate the presentation and the update. Chairman, that concludes the Wildlife Committee.
Thank you, Commissioner Gardner. We're going to take a quick 10-minute break. Get back as quick as we can.